I remember when I was diagnosed with panic attacks and extreme anxiety. I was diagnosed at 19, and I remember my mom saying that I shouldn't take medicine and that I just wasn't praying enough, or that I wasn't trusting enough. And so for, I would say 4 years, I had 2 kids, and then I finally went back to the doctor. I would say for 4 years, I really struggled with the understanding that I could be a Christian and take medicine at the same time. And I feel like I was able to walk through that time and get through that time with a combination of medicine, people praying for me, and still understanding that even though I was in this season of depression and anxiety, that God wasn't going to leave. There were times I didn't feel him. I mean, there were times that I really felt desperate and alone. But I had seen God work enough to know that he wasn't going to leave me. So I think it was just that knowledge, combined with other helpful things that helped me get through that time. So I'm the Director of Stewardship and Finance at Whitewater, and when people hear the word stewardship, they're a little bit, they ask a lot of questions, like what exactly does that mean? And so basically what I have the opportunity of doing is helping people see how they can best use the resources that God has given them. And you can do that in a variety of ways. Of course, that is through giving. And specifically in my role, it's giving through finances, which takes me to the second part of my job, which is Director of Finance. And I get to deal with numbers, which is my favorite thing in the world. I know people joke about, like, what are you doing on Friday night? I probably am working on a spreadsheet somewhere. So that is what I get to do at Whitewater. I absolutely love what I do, and it brings me a lot of joy. I have a medical background. I was actually I have a business degree, but I went back for nursing. And I think that nursing or the medical field is probably the only other time I've felt that same feeling of being able to help people, whether it's hard or it's easy. Talking about giving, like, there is this unspoken awkwardness that comes when you start talking about money and talking about giving. And I feel like that's even more so present when you're talking about the church or giving money away. Like when it's your own money, you can kind of keep that private, but when it comes to talking about money within the church, it's kind of like, are you really going to go there? And I always joke and say, yeah, we're going to go there. It really is not one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm passionate about helping people find financial freedom, but talking about people's money, gosh, it can get weird really fast. And so let's just put that out there and just say that we understand that it's weird, and that's okay. We understand that money is a private thing, but it's also something that God has given us to use wisely. So in end of 2015, beginning of 2016, my husband and I found ourselves in a very difficult financial position. We were completely broke. We had student loan debt, credit card debt, all the debt. And we were actually on vacation with my mom at the time. She had paid for us to go, and I remember Mike looking at me and saying, hey, if this was up to us, we wouldn't be here. Like, because we couldn't even afford groceries most months. So we decided that at that moment we were going to change our future forever. And the first thing we decided to do is to give. Which was probably the hardest decision for us to make. It wasn't so much a hard or a difficult decision on my end, but Mike grew up differently than I did and didn't have that stable background in terms of using, money well. And so it was I remember the conversation of when we brought up tithing, and it was kind of like, no, we shouldn't give because we're in debt. And I'm like, but we should give because that's what we've been called to do. And so it was really this, it didn't start out being like a tithe or a 10%. It was just give where you are. And it was just one step in the right direction. And so over the course of 3 years, we were able to increase our giving year after year, and we could continually see God bless our efforts. And I when I tell people the story, I try to make sure that they understand that God doesn't always bless us financially, but there were many situations in our particular case where he did, whether that was an increase of hours or overtime that didn't used to be available was somehow available. And so we could see that through our faithfulness and our belief that God was going to provide, that he did every single time. And what was amazing to me is that he didn't just provide, it was always over and above, like beyond what we needed. my husband found out that he had stage 4 lung cancer, and he was 38, I was 38, and it was at this point in our lives where you think that, like the best is yet to come. We had 4 kids, still have 4 kids, but we have 4 kids, and it was just that initial shock, like, okay, what are we going to do? And I could see God's faithfulness through friends showing up, through encouraging text messages, through just the feeling that I got that I wasn't alone and that we weren't alone through this. And that carried out throughout his sickness, and actually even over the last 2 years since he's passed away, that God has continued to be faithful. And I think that sometimes people think that God's faithfulness is going to come or show itself in these huge ways. And for me, what I've learned is that God's faithfulness is shown in just even sometimes the smallest of things, which should give all of us hope, because I think we can all find God in whatever situation we are, in whatever season of life we are.